On today's episode of Locked On Wild, I can't believe they actually did it, but Marco Rossi on the fourth line tonight.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we'll take a look at the changes for tonight's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, which shouldn't take long because it's two players. We'll also take a look at the statistics from game one for the line combinations to see if the changes made are really the best for this Wild offense. We'll talk about some keys to tonight's matchup against Vegas. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, credentialed member of the media, and already got one nap in today. Not nearly enough. So I'm tired, I'm crabby, and we still got 3 hours before puck drop tonight. But the thing that we were kind of wondering if it would happen did, in fact, actually happen. Line changes for tonight's game are as follows. Ryan Hartman moved up to the third line. Marco Rossi on line 4. So your lineup tonight consists of Kirill, Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson Ek, Matt Boldy, Marcus Johansson, Freddie Gaudreau, Mats Zuccarello, Marcus Foligno, Ryan Hartman, Gustav Nyquist, Yakov Trenyan, Marco Rossi, and Justin Brazeau. On defense, it's Jonas Brodin and Brock Faber, Jake Middleton, Jared Spurgeon, and Zeev Boyum and Zach Bogosian. That second line is something else. Not appealing visually whatsoever. And if you want me to paint even a more appalling picture, the expected goals percentage of all of the different lines for the Minnesota Wild in game one, that line had the second lowest expected goals percentage of any of them at 31.8%. That also happened to be the Corsi 4 percentage, which means not only did that line not possess the puck enough, they were not a threat to score really at all. Although the line combination that had the worst was Marcus Foligno, Marco Rossi, and Gustav Nyquist. 4.5% expected goals, which is unheard of, and a Corsi 4 percentage of 30%. And look, I get it. I get half of it. Ryan Hartman played pretty well, all things considered. So I understand wanting to maybe elevate him above a fourth line role. Fine. You want to go that route? That's perfectly fine. But it is just amazing to me how this coaching staff continues to, do these different things with Marco Rossi playing lower in the lineup. When it doesn't work out, they kind of throw their hands up and say, well, geez, what are we supposed to do? Yeah, can't get it done single-handedly by himself. And it just... And we're going to talk about this on Denny's show tomorrow night. It just leads you to believe further and further that Marco Rossi's days are numbered. He's down to his final few games with this team. It feels like his work ethic and his play style just is not conducive to whatever this team is trying to do. So it feels more and more likely that he is going to end up getting traded in the offseason for whatever bigger player Bill Guerin can find for him. But, we knew that this was going to be an issue coming into the series. So the everydayers have heard me talk about this multiple times is the Wild were at a disadvantage going into the series from a depth standpoint. They were at a massive disadvantage from a depth standpoint because Vegas consistently has 4 lines that they can hit you with that not only can play physical, but that can score. It's a lineup that just possesses so many different players that can get you whatever you need. Brett Howden played on the 4th line. He scored 2 goals in game 1. He had 23 on the season. Nicholas Waugh had 15. Keegan Colasar had 12 from your 4th line. And the Minnesota Wilds, their 4th line didn't have 12 goals combined. I mean, depending on who's playing there, I know Hartman had 11. Trenyon had 7 or 8. So you're at probably 20 goals total between your 4th line. But you just have so many different players that can score, can give the threat to score. And this is something that I've talked about going all the way back to during the season is there are so many players on this Wild roster that are one or the other. Play good defense or score goals. You can find players that can do both. Those players do exist. But it just puts so much pressure on your top 2 lines. The top line did their job. The top line pushed. Matt Boldy got you a couple of goals. But guess what? As we talked about before the series even started, it's not about what the top guys do. It's about what the rest of the lineup does. And nobody was able to generate anything serious to help out. And you have combinations now that just we've seen time and time again. They're just not consistently able to get it done. And it's like punish one of the few guys that can. And that is, I think, been I think that's been a real undertone of this this entire Bill Guerin tenure is you have all these guys that just consistently cannot generate offense. And when you get players that can, you punish them because they're not getting it done. You know, Kevin Fiala, the second best player on the Minnesota Wild roster in 2021-2022, gave you a legitimate second line to complement what Kirill Kaprizov was doing. But he didn't play defense. He scored a ton, but he didn't play defense. And so Bill Guerin got frustrated with that. So we need more defense. Need more defense. And so Fiala got traded. Marco Rossi, 2-time 20-goal scorer in the early part of his career. Got to do more. Need more from him. Need more from him. Without pointing at some of the guys that had 11 goals, get suspended this year, you just, like, if you just look at the comparison, here are the number of players that had, there was only one player in the Vegas Golden Knights' entire lineup that had fewer than 10 goals. That was William Karlsson. Barbashev had 23. Eichel had 28. Stone had 19. Saad had 13. Hertl had 32. Dorofeyev had 35. Olofsson had 15. Riley Smith had 13. Brett Howden had 23. Waugh had 15. Colasar had 12. And William Karlsson had 9. And he's your third-line center. If you go to the Minnesota Wild lineup, it's a much different story. You have Yakov Trenyon with 7. Justin Brazeau had 1 since he came here. Gustav Nyquist had 1 since he came here. Ryan Hartman has 11. Zuccarello with 19. Goudreau with 18. Johansson with 11. You just have a bunch of people that are tapped out in this lineup. Kirill had 25, Boldy had 27, Rossi had 24. Freddie Gaudreau had 18, but he's not a consistent goal scoring threat. We knew this was going to be an issue coming into the series. But putting one of your more consistent offensive players into a role that's going to likely see him play 8-9 minutes is just not a recipe for success, I don't think. We haven't even gotten into the numbers really for what those two middle lines did in game one. And I'll just throw a combination out there in segment 2 that I think might give you a better option just off the top of my head. We'll talk about that as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I have a bag of the honey roasted, no shells on my coffee table at all times. My absolute favorite go-to Wonderful Pistachios. Anytime I just get a little hankering for a snack, that's the one that I go to. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. We will have the next live show for you coming up tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. We'll recap the first 2 games of the series and wait till you hear what Denny has to say about Marco Rossi. Starting to take a peek at some potential returns for Rossi. Because it seems likely at this point that he's going to be moved. So we've got a couple of polls up. Make sure to check those out on the Locked on Wild YouTube channel, and we'll take air at 8 p.m. tomorrow night to recap, depending on how tonight's game goes, an 0-2 hole for the Minnesota Wild, and there will be plenty to talk about. So make sure to check out the best show of the week right here on Locked on Wild, coming up tomorrow at 8. Right off the top of my head, Kaprizov, Eriksson, Boldy. That was the only line that got anything done. I'd go with that. That's fine. Marcus Foligno, Marco Rossi, and Matt Zuccarello for line 2. Foligno and Rossi appear to have some pretty good chemistry together. Foligno has been one of your more consistent players this season. Again, he's not really an offense-oriented player, but Gustav Nyquist is basically unplayable at this point. Basically unplayable. So the fact that he's in the lineup at this point for penalty kill, which is a specialist. That's what that is a specialist. And Bill Guerin has said at previous points, we don't have specialists in this lineup. Or you go this route. Kaprizov, Rossi, Zuccarello, line 1. Boldy, Eriksson, Foligno, line 2. Boldy and Foligno had some chemistry here recently. Again, I feel like Foligno is more of a top 6 player than Marcus Johansson is at this point, than Freddie Gaudreau is at this point. I don't in looking at these line combinations that are set to roll out here tonight, I don't get intimidated by any of them except line one. And Vegas is a good enough defensive team that they say, we'll let that top line have theirs. We don't have to worry about what the rest of the lineup's bringing to the table. So, like Yakov Trenyan, Marco Rossi, and Justin Brazeau, like what is the strategy? You've got two big bodies that are going to hit, and to Trenyan's credit, he did in game one. He finished with 8 of them in just under 10 minutes of ice time. Brazeau had 4 hits, I think, but I don't see the ability to generate there unless Rossi brings it in himself and you use both Trenyan and Brazeau to work down low to try to win puck battles behind the net, and they feed Rossi right out in front. That's about the only strategy that I see that works with that combination. And Trenyan and Brazeau, notably not fast, but there's a ton of that in this lineup. There's a ton of notably not fast in this Minnesota lineup up and down. And Freddie was 8 of 15 in the faceoff circle. Yes. But you're not generating a ton offensively. Like statistically, those line combinations, the Johansson, Gaudreau, Zuccarello, that line generated in 8 minutes, they generated 7 shot attempts in 8 minutes. Boldy, Eriksson-Ek, and Kaprizov in 17 minutes generated 27. As far as actual shots on goal are concerned, 1 shot on goal officially in their time on ice together, 8 minutes, 29 seconds. A goals percentage of 31.8%. This is your second line. A goals percentage of 31.8%, a Corsi for percentage of 31.8%. So I can understand not wanting to break up Boldy, Eriksson at Kaprizov because they did their job. But is it better to have a 100% line and a 66% line and a 50% line and a 30% line? Or is it better to have 2 lines of 80% at the top? I really don't know. But then third line, like that third line was broken up during the game. 7 minutes and 9 seconds of ice time together. They generated 1 shot on goal, 2 against, but an expected goals for of 0.009. So not even a threat of scoring. And, you know, that fourth line with Hartman on there, they had the second best expected goals percentage of any of the line combinations that played in game one. And actually, Hartman was the center on the ice for both of the Matt Boldy goals. It was not Joel Eriksson-Ek. It was Ryan Hartman. So I get it. Hartman does deserve more ice time. Yes, he does. But there are we're right back to it. We're right back to it with there are too many players that are simply existing in the playoffs. The playoffs. I'm going to be fascinated to see how these combinations play out. If this offense is able to generate enough, or if it's similar to what we saw in game one, where you're kind of hoping for mistakes because just not Just not what I would call solid-looking line combinations. Let's finish the show today by taking a look at some keys to the game. You can probably guess. The everydayers can probably guess what they are, but we'll rehash them for you as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Let me repeat that. If you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Minnesota Timberwolves in action tonight. If you're in a state where sports betting is legal, the Timberwolves are 5.5-point underdogs against the Los Angeles Lakers after winning the first game of the series by 20-plus points. Feels like that would be the route that I would go, would be picking the Wolves to cover. Seems pretty easy at this point. And if it's your first $5 bet, boom, $250 in bonus bets, no questions asked. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, a reminder, our next live show with Denny will be tomorrow night at 8 p.m. There are polls up on YouTube right now. Please leave your thoughts as to what you would like to see in return for Marco Rossi. Would you be willing to give up for a player like Tage Thompson? Check those polls out and leave your thoughts, and join us tomorrow night at 8. So as far as keys to the game go, let's start number one with you can't even really say you got to try to contend with the top line, because listen to the numbers for the Barbashev Eichel Stone line that played 12 plus minutes, 12 minutes, 50 seconds. Listen to these numbers. They had 12 shot attempts for, 24 shot attempts against while they were out there on the ice for game one. That ended up being 5 goals or 5 shots on goal, 8 shots on goal against. They had an expected goals percentage under 50%, a Corsi for percentage of 33%. So mission accomplished in contending with the top line. The Wild did a really good job of holding them in check. Did they have some chances in close? Sure. But for the most part, they were held in check. You got to do that again. That's the first key. You got to do that again against Barbashev, Eichel, and Stone. If they're allowed to kind of take over, we saw in that 5-1 loss to the Vegas Golden Knights how quickly that game flipped on its head. And next thing you know, Jack Eichel's got a hat trick. You got to continue to contend with them. What was problematic was the fact that the Howden line did their thing and the Saad line did their thing. Those line combinations really, like the Saad, Hurdle, Dorofeyev line, 19 shot attempts for, 5 against, 6 shots on goal for, 2 against. They had an expected goals of 94.5% and a Corsi for percentage of 79.2%. In fact, only line of the game with a expected goals percentage of above 50 and a Corsi for percentage of above 50. So you want to talk about locking things down? Other than that line, the Wild defense held pretty much everybody in check. But that's the problem, is now you throw additional attention at that line tonight and the Barbashev Eichel Stone line gets going. This is what lineup depth does when you can't match it, is you throw more attention at one, another steps up to take its place. It's like cutting heads off a hydra. You cut one head off, 3 more pop up to take its place. Lineup depth. So the key, number one, is you got to continue to do what you did against the Eichel line. But other than that, you've got to really try to keep those lines in check, especially that second line. Although, to be fair, if I had my pick as to which line is going to factor into the scoring, that second line every time. Just don't let that top line get going. As far as shot attempts go, Wild have to do, and again, the everydayers know this, you have to do a better job of getting to the net. It's going to be difficult because the Vegas Golden Knights are big. Their lineup is big, but you have to find a way to get to the net. 2 high-danger shot attempts the entire game. The Wild scored 2 low-danger goals. They can't rely on that. You can't rely on scoring from perimeter unless you are setting the world's best screens. You can't rely on that. You have to crash the net. You have to get in close. I was listening to Pat Micheletti on with Paul Allen earlier this week, and he's absolutely right. You got to get Adin Hill to move. You have to move him off his spot. If you allow him to buckle himself in and just sit and just let shots get volleyed off of him without him having to move or do anything, you're shooting at a brick wall. So you got to get him to move off his spot. You got to get him going from one side to the next. You got to get him thinking. It's not unlike how you have to contend against Jake Ottinger. If you allow him to get set and to do his thing, you're going to have problems. So the Wild have to get Adin Hill moving in this game, which means getting to the net, rebound shot attempts, rebound high danger attempts, crash the net. Third bullet point on the overlay here in all capital letters because it's important. And the final key here tonight, what would it be if we went a full show in the playoffs without talking about the special teams? It's just Minnesota Wild and poor special teams play is a match made in heaven. On the power play specifically, how about we get a shot at the goalie? Number one, that would be nice because these opportunities are going to be few and far in between. We saw that in game 1. It'll be no different in game 2 unless Vegas all of a sudden turns into the Dallas Stars and is diving all over the place and flopping all over the place. They're not going to give it to you. Vegas is not going to hand you power play opportunities and special teams opportunities and power play goals. You have to earn it. You have to go out there and earn the opportunities by being quicker, by skating around them, by putting them in positions to have to reach and have to prevent things from happening by throwing their stick out there to try to stop somebody from getting to a puck first or grabbing a jersey. You have to earn those things. Vegas is not just going to say, "Oh, you know what? You guys are trying really hard. We'd like to give you a power play goal for your efforts." It's not how this works. The opportunities are few and far in between. Were there some that were not called in game 1? Sure. But guess what? The Wild had one and they did nothing with it. And that was the difference in the game. That's how it works in the postseason. Could have seen that coming from a mile away. You don't score on a power play opportunity and you give up a power play goal. You're going to lose. You're going to lose that game 9 times out of 10. So the Wild need to utilize and actually shoot on the power play in order to convert on those opportunities. If you get 1 or 2 a game, you have to score on 1. They're too important in the postseason when everything is magnified. And on the penalty kill, win a bleep and face off. It's that simple. Win a face off. Win a face off, clear the puck. It's that simple. It's been an issue for over 3 years. And at some point, it gets to not being. We've gone through multiple coaching regimes with the same players, and the penalty kill is still bad. Multiple schemes, multiple points of execution, and the penalty kill is still bad. So whose fault is it? It's a player problem. You have to be better. Face off, clear the puck, throw your body in front of a shot, clear the puck. Every second step, the immediate trigger point should be clear the puck. Or you're going to give up a power play goal 6 seconds in. We will have a postcast after the game tonight, albeit a short one. We'll probably keep it at right around a half hour. So join us after the game is done, and we'll see if the Wild can even the series up at 1 game apiece or if they head home down 0-2. That's our show for today. Appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Make sure to check out the polls on YouTube in anticipation of Denny's show coming up tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So make sure to join us then. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.